I am Arthur Ghosh. I am a senior fellow here at the Nehru Memorial. We have a very eminent speaker today. Rather, I am not the right person to chair this meeting. It was scheduled for Professor Rangarajan to preside over the meeting, but he was called for some important meeting somewhere, and that's why I am here to chair the session. I am not at all, should I say, no expertise on the subject at all. As a common man only I know something, but I'll be benefiting from his talk. But before I request Professor Gopal to speak, I have a couple of announcements to make about the future programs of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. One is that on Monday, starting at 9 o'clock, we have a workshop which is being organized by one of our colleagues who is not here, Dr. Rakhi Kalita, and the subject is Writing India's Northeast, the Poetics and Politics of Representation. This will be an all-day activity. Then we have on 30th September, Shrikant Memorial Lecture. The lecture is going to be delivered by Professor Hiren Guhai of Guwahati University, and the subject is Assam Perspectives on Development. And please remember, this is at 5 o'clock, not the usual time of 3 o'clock, and this will be preceded by the all-day workshop on Northeast that I just mentioned. Then on 4th, there is a program which has been postponed. I need not mention about it. On 4th of October at 5:30 p.m., note the time, 5:30 p.m., we have public lecture by Professor Farhat Hassan, University of Delhi, and the subject is Nationalism, Nation Building, and the Historian of Mughal India. On 7th October, again at 5:30 p.m., there is a seminar by Kshitij Rana. He is an architect, and the subject is M.M. Rana, Celebrating the Architect. Mr. Rana passed away last year. He is one of the noted architects of India. In 2012 he passed away, and this is in his memory that this seminar is being organized. On 8th of October, Tuesday at 3 o'clock, in association with Papia Ghosh Memorial Trust. Papia Ghosh, you might be remembering, was a very good historian from Patna, and she had worked extensively on Bihari migrants or refugees in East Pakistan, East Bengal. This is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Besides that, I have to announce a couple of recent publications of the Nehru Memorial Museum Library as within the monograph series. Each monograph would cost only 100 rupees, and the monographs that are ready for sale now, you can buy the earlier ones as well. The first is by Heider Goodall, University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, and the subject is Geographies of Memory, Environmental History and Spatial Power. The second is by Markant Paranjpe of Jawaharlal Nehru University, Makaran Paranjpe, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and his monograph is on Swami Vivekananda and the Shaping of Indian Modernity. Third is by Catherine Morrison, University of Chicago. Subject is The Human Face of the Land, Why the Past Matters for India's Environmental Future. Two of these are relevant to the talk that we are going to have. Then three other monographs under the series, Perspectives in Indian Development. They are by Richard Allen of New York University, Comedies of Errors, Shakespeare and Indian Cinema, and the Poetics of Mistaken Identity. I know a couple of movies, yes, based on mistaken identities in India, Bengali as well as Hindi. Then we have Sutopa Chatterjee Sarkar of West Bengal State University. She has written a monograph on life, literature and folk deities in the mangroves, essentially Sundarbans. Third, by Roshni Sengupta of Amity University, Haryana, and the subject is Islamist terrorist in popular Hindi cinema, crisis of perspective in Kurban and New York. These are the few announcements, and now I request Professor Gopal Guru to make his presentation. Generally, we request this speaker to spend about 40-45 minutes for the talk, followed by discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Pata Ghosh. I must also thank the organizers of this particular special lecture series on social justice for inviting me to speak to you this afternoon. I'm sure you are wondering as to why I'm speaking on this subject, which I have not followed at all in my writings so far. But I want you to believe that I've been really actually very much concerned about this subject, though I have not written about this subject formally. This subject has been of a great interest to me, partly because I was the part of the movement in Karnataka, in Maharashtra, about social forestry and land rights movements of the Dalits. And my evidence is from that particular time I spent in the late 70s and early 80s. So I can make a small claim that yes, I have something to say about environment and the question of the marginals, the one groups in the society. I would like to submit to your consideration that there is a slight change in my title. Justice, Rights and Environmentalism in India, understanding shifting significance in the environmental responses from the margin. So this is a new title, forget about the old title. So I have not deviated from that title, but I would like to I have tried to reformulate the title. I'm going to read, just for a change, I'm going to read, and it might sound to be boring. Normally I don't read, but since it is not my subject, I don't want to commit silly mistakes, so I want to just read out. And yes, the nature is also very, very supportive. It's not threatening. In the above title, there are three words that form the core of the main argument of this essay under consideration. And these are moral significance, justice and environment. These are three words which form the part of this title. For justice and environment, these two terms are relatively well discussed in the literature on ecology and environment discourse in this country. I don't want to repeat how much work has been done on these two words actually, justice and environment. Not so much justice but environment certainly. While justice and environment, these two terms are relatively well discussed in the literature on ecology and environment discourse in this country, the capacious terms such as social significance, however, seems to have received relatively less attention from the scholars. That is my claim. I may be wrong. Thus, the task of mapping of shifting levels of significance, and these levels are moral, social, political, and theoretical, within the environmental discourse in India becomes quite urgent. While one is involved in such mapping exercise, one is to keep in mind that the three core words in the title have to be respectfully integrated in an expansive or alternative understanding of environmentalism. From the margin. Needless to say, it is the responsibility of those who are making claims for the margin to make necessary connection between these three terms. Those who are making a claim that there is an alternative view of environmentalism coming from the margin, they also respectfully integrate these three words into their logical coherence. That's the appeal. if you fail to do this, this would help. This would help protecting these words from falling into isolation, and which could be quite unproductive, therefore. Hence, the major focus of essay is to achieve the necessary logical coherence within these three words. In the rest of the essay, I am going to argue that the conception of justice provides. I am just now going to interlink them in some sense. In the rest of the essay, I am going to argue that the conception of justice provides the background conditions for the distribution of rights. So I am already making a claim that justice becomes the precondition for the expression of distributive rights. So there is no tension between rights and justice. That's the first submission. Conversely, I further argue these rights necessarily produce tension between a particular conception of justice, as they call in justice literature old justice, having bearing on the present generation, and intergenerational conception of justice implicating in its logic future generation. So justice as it happens today, and justice applicable to the future generation. And I am going to make another point. A particular social location of categories such as justice and rights, I argue, seeks to empower the argument which in the present context is directed at problematizing the established conception of justice and rights. The name of the series is Interrogating Justice. So I am actually making a claim there. Let me further assert that a socially embedded or ontologically bracketed categories such as justice as fair distribution of rights necessarily undercuts both the moral as well as theoretical significance of the intergenerational conception of justice. I am already problematizing intergenerational conception of justice. And this intergenerational conception of justice is considered to be emanating from the universally desirable idea of environmental conservation. I mean, the literature available on conservation, there is a lot of literature available on conservation, is basically emphatically looking for intergenerational justice to make the future safe for generation in future. That's the appeal there. Finally, the idea of conservation of environment makes it necessary on our part to address the question: under what conditions conservation of environment acquires moral significance? Whose environmental consciousness, therefore, carries with itself moral significance? Whose is the question. Let me start from the last question and make an assertion that moral significance is internal to, now I am specifically referring to Dalit. Let me start from the last question and make an assertion that moral significance is internal to Dalit response to environmental concern. It is very much internal, it's not outside. To put differently, moral significance emerges in environmental conditions that are dependent on human will, and this is a problematic statement I am making. We can have some discussion on this, I am not sure about it. To put differently, moral significance emerges in environmental conditions that are independent of human will and not produced by the force of human interest. Conditions are not chosen, and in fact they are given by nature, like floods and other things. You might say that floods are human generated, but that's a debatable point in terms of Uttarakhand and other things. There is debate among the environmentalists. And as environmental activism suggests, human and his corporate interests. Human interest can aggravate these conditions. For example, vulnerable groups, including Dalit, do not have control over excesses of nature. Moral significance, excess of nature is what? Extreme conditions, weather conditions, rain, flood, heat, severe cold. These are all excesses, and vulnerable groups like Dalits are the first target of these adverse conditions. Moral significance also emerges in the lack of material conditions. As we shall look at this point in some detail in the second section of this essay, most of the Dalits do not have land as a resource to make an authentic connection with environment. That's the point. In view of these two conditionalities, Dalit response to environmental concern involves the possibility of emergence of moral significance. In certain philosophical sense, and I am having Taylor and G.S. Mill and Gandhi in my mind at the moment, moral significance could be defined. I am defining moral significance now. Moral significance could be defined as an affirmation of the ordinary. An affirmation obviously is not assertion. Affirmation is not assertion, but moral is that a particular individual or a group takes in larger interest of living human being. In such affirmation, sexual interest gets compounded with a larger interest. Affirmation of the ordinary thus minimizes mutual desire for social dominance. This is, I think, a significant point as far as I can see. I would like to repeat this one. Affirmation of the ordinary thus minimizes mutual desire for social domination. In certain conditions, vulnerable groups are structurally at the disadvantaged position to desire for domination over society and nature. Caricature laborers, people who are displaced, people who are invisibilized, people who stay in slums cannot have desire to really dominate, to produce social dominance. So that's very obvious. It is in this sense that Dalit response to environmental is internal, as it emanates from the structurally unfavorable conditions. In order to highlight the social significance, moral significance, would like to make an initial claim that Dalit seems to be in a privileged epistemic position to provide necessary vantage point to enter into the following questions. Let me describe this question. Why is that Dalit's participation in conservation of environment is morally so significant? And this is the question. This is the central question. And I'm also making the point that why is that Dalit question offers anybody an epistemologically privileged position. And I must submit your consideration. You can find that Dalit question can empower anybody to really poke holes in political society, poke holes anywhere. That's a very, and I have evidence, so I don't want to repeat that, but it is a very handy situation. First, also let me also quickly add here a couple of clarificatory points. First, Dalit vantage point from where one can access the environmental question also becomes theoretically significant, particularly in the context of the lack of adequate treatment that the scholars have assigned to the relationship between Dalit and environment. And I am aware that Gopal is sitting here and he has done a wonderful work on this connection between connection between Dalit and environment. And I have Mukilji of pass mein. It says, what it says? It says Dalit and Indian environmental politics. That's the EPW article. I couldn't get a copy of your book, but I am still relying on your piece in EPW. But some of the studies that try to understand the relationship between Dalit and environment are quite absurd. I must really submit your consideration. Somebody called Bal Subramanian from some university in Tamil Nadu. And I would really request people to really go through that. It's making a joke of Dalit actually. Dalit question and environment. So I will refer to that. So the vantage point will always give you a theoretical concept to really elaborate on, to make a very strong connection between Dalit and environment, and also unfold to you different aspects with different insights into the questions of environmentalism. This is the first advantage that we get when you resurrect Dalit as the point of reference. Secondly, I am aware about the vast body of research work that has brought out seminal aspects of political significance surrounding ecological and environmental concerns. And Mahesh is not there now, but I would say that Mahesh has done very important work, then Madhav Gandhi and Ramchandra Bhuvan and many others. Scholars have made important contributions in understanding the political significance for both pedagogical as well as collective information for policy formulation and its rectification as well. I would thus choose to defend the claim that moral significance is internal to Dalit response to environmental questions. That's my preoccupation at the moment. I am not going to discuss political significance of the environmental question. I am leaving it out because others have done enough work on that. But I will bring in political aspect later. Dalit response to environmental issues is morally significant because A, in certain fundamental sense, they have a stake in the issue of environmental conservation and it is not motivated by any instrumental or utilitarian logic. That's why it is morally significant. Their action does not seem to be directed at producing good consequences for their own immediate well-being. Rather, it is undertaken to achieve general welfare of social goods across board. That's the moral significance. However, it has to be stressed here that the emergence of environmental consciousness within the Dalit is not the result of pure intuition. In fact, its emergence is rooted in the reason embedded in the lack of material faith, which would lead to counter-environmental consciousness attributed primarily against the ruthless exploitation of natural resources. Interestingly, one could notice today the possibility of this emergence of negative environmental consciousness among some of the enterprising Dalits. And I have this news from Karnataka where a Dalit, a member of DK, Dalit, what is it, DK? I forget. Those are the people who want to become the Dalit capitalist. That's Dalit Chamber of Commerce. A member of Dalit Chamber of Commerce is now pleading that we should get equal access to the resources and its exploitation. So right to exploit resources on equal basis. This is the right they are now demanding. And Dr. Rajshekhar is there and I want him to really comment on this. We have recently read in the newspaper that a Dalit entrepreneur from Karnataka reportedly has suggested that Dalits, along with other corporate firms, should get an equal opportunity, equal share in the exploitation of natural resources. Something which is very interesting. In fact, Dalits are the victims, and in fact, I'm really appealing to these people. In fact, Dalits are the victims of the vagaries of the nature. When the nature goes overboard and it devastates the life of vulnerable with its excesses, unbearable temperatures, severe cold, and torrential rain, nature really brings a lot of difficulties for these vulnerable groups. And yet, Dalits have the remarkable past. Nature is not nice to Dalits in terms of these excesses. And yet, Dalits have the remarkable past, and I am now relying on a very small historical, small evidence from the historical past. And yet, Dalits have the remarkable past to suggest that they have always taken the moral lead to plead with the nature, that it should be considered in showering its blessing not on them directly but on those whose land is dependent on the rain. See, this moral touch is evident here. You are actually pleading with the nature. Look here, you may not be nice to her, but you should be nice to the landlord, because his land or her land, or maybe his land, should get rain so that we can then get employment later. The list of Vara region, there is a very good work on Dalit, and Mahesh has written on that. Vara region is a 4 districts, but we don't hear Vara. Vidarbha has really overshadowed Vara, and we are asking for Vidarbha seat, and I might ask for Vara seat as well. Amravati, Akola, Buldana, and Yavatmal, these are 4 districts which constitute the part of Vara, where Vara is a cotton growing region, and many people have worked on how how Britishers really converted commerce into cultivating enterprise, and as a result, cattle were really deprived of order and other things. So that's another history. Dalits of variety, one of these four is, for example, until recently were found practicing historically developed traditions called Dholi. Yashoda, you know Dholi? Dholi is a tradition which was being practiced among the Dalits of these four regions. What is Dholi? Dholi is a cultural practice, and not many people know it. I have not seen this word in the literature on the environment, but I can claim that, no? This is for the first time I'm thinking of. I'm just joking. They followed this cultural practice in order to expose the content that the landed classes have for the vegetation. I mean, Dholi is the cultural practice in which Dalits will really expose the contempt that the landed peasantry has for the vegetation trees. Because you find that the landed gentry always remove the trees so that being more and more land under cultivation. Because when the crop doesn't grow if it is shade, so felling the trees. And that was being criticized by the Dalits in this Dholi. Moreover, Dholi also involved a moral lead taken by Dalits on behalf of everybody in the ecological setting to plead with the nature that it should not be harsh with the peasant, and it should really give enough proportionate rains in proportionate degree so that they can grow grains and other crops. Dalit in the event of drought or delayed monsoon would always invoke this tradition and would sing the song. And this is song in Marathi. Dholi Dholi Panete Alke Alke Jordan. This is Alke Alke Jordan gives, God gives us water, rain, and gives bounty of grain. But they have no land. They have nothing. But they are asking for somebody's well-being. That's the moral significance one can underline here. However, in the contemporary times, Dalits have given up this tradition, which at one time in history gave them moral significance. I am entering into a different argument now. The discontinuation of Dholi on the Dalit community could be understood in terms of single important factor, that is untouchable conversion to Buddhism. That's the break. Buddhist conversion has led them to dissociate themselves from these cultural practices that have some justification in ritualized Hinduism. Once they have become Buddhists, they have given up this tradition. Interestingly, not regularly, in some cases, the Buddhists have, the converted Buddhists have also adopted the Buddhist environmental policy. And Buddhism has a very rich tradition, as you know, Yashoda, you will agree with me. And I'm just quoting Yashoda because I only see him as a Buddhist scholar around. I don't see anybody, so I'm sorry, forgive me for my ignorance. Interestingly, in some cases, the converted Buddhists have also adopted the environmental friendly policy. And as we all know, in Buddhist tradition, at least the tradition which Baba Saheb Ambedkar adopted, there's a tradition that the dead person has to be buried in the midst of the trees, so that the body becomes useful for the growth of trees. And that's a very, very paramount, and that's an important point. But now that the trees are really disappearing, there's no validity to this whole thing. This kind of environmental commitment among the Dalits has relatively more moral weightage. This is because of two reasons again. In the past, Dalit environmental activism was given by an altruistic good, as I mentioned, which they located in their own material well-being, not in their own material well-being, but that of the landed gentry. They felt a genuine concern for the difficulties that the landed classes faced during the adversarial natural conditions created by the vagaries of the nature. As mentioned earlier, Dalits took lead in invoking timely information on nature into the biogeographic. Biogeography is the term which people are using these days. The biogeographic framework of the landed gentry. Thus, the tradition of Dholi prevalent among the Dalits a few decades ago. Some might argue that the tradition of Dholi prevalent among the Dalits a few decades ago represented the harmony between their own well-being and the material well-being of the landed people. At the anthropological level, account of Dholi would clearly bring forth the moral significance of Dalit response to environment. Now, this is, so I'm making the point that discontinuation is because of the Buddhist conversion. In case there is devastation or excessive by nature or violence of the nature, the Dalit will not hold nature responsible for the difficulties they face. They face or they are facing. Very interestingly, what they would do is to hold the Gosavi, the Jyotisha responsible for the excesses. See, that's another point to be noted. And they would then sing the song, Pandanalavi Gadi Ukta Dosai Echi Gadi. I mean, the continuous rains are devastating our life. Who is responsible? The Gosavi, the Jyotisha. So God take him, catch him, and actually uproot his Dadi, his Dadi. And actually they made it tough. So Gosavi is always the Brahmanic, so they would remove the tough. And that is the song that they would sing. Their struggles to cope up with the excesses of nature is morally much superior to the landed classes who suffer from material losses caused by the values of the nature. Because then, you know, there's a difference. How is that? And I have narrated these, stories of the poor Dalits, landless Dalits, shelterless Dalits, Dalits doing shanty shelters. What kind of difficulties do they face when it is raining continuously? And there is a aesthetic to that. These rains, huge leakage from the roof will create a different kind of music. And they will show that, that rain dripping water in the vessel, and that will create a different sound. So there is an aesthetic to this. So they are trying to they try during the in the past to really cope up with this vagaries by creating a music of suffering. So that's the aesthetic quality of their responses to environmental accesses. But I'm not going to celebrate a moment this anyway. Next section is about rights, therefore. Okay, now another problem that one faces is why is that there is a superior moral weightage to their suffering caused by the excesses? Because I have not seen Rajshekhar, please tell me whether there is a provision in the state to really help to compensate for the days, working days lost during the rainy season, big drop. While 3,000 crore rupees have been sanctioned out last year in Maharashtra government to compensate for the crop lost in the way, the wheat crop. What about laborers who do not get any job, any work during this continuous rain? How they have been compensated? They are compensated during drought, but not in the way. I have not seen that. Please correct me if I am wrong, if I am making a very preposterous argument against the state. You are not siding with the state anyway, though you belong to the state. Central government, big boss. Okay, so let me make another point. I will use recording. It is in this context we should defend the Dalit rights to land as a necessary condition to remain relevant in the larger life of the state. I am taking a very rigorous position now. You may not like me. Foucauldians will not like this position, but I am making this position very clear. It is in this context we should defend the Dalit rights to land as a necessary condition to remain relevant as a rational subject. I am not made that word here. As a rational subject in the larger life of the state. I am already claiming this the larger life of the state, the spirit, which is so coherent in terms of historical arrival. As the Dalit response to the environmental issues indicates, they are progressively moving out from the cultural life of community only into the larger rational life of the state. The modern conception of rights, therefore, helps them to define their rational presence in the larger life of the state. The language of rights and a new language of rights does have a triggering impact on them. But before we discuss this quality constitution of Dalit rights to land, let us complete our discussion on the moral significance of Dalit response environment. This is the last point, and Jim, you might find it interesting now. Because you're working on Mumbai, so I would get your... the role of Dalit in maintaining sound environment by keeping Indian metropolis clean has been applauded by some middle-class environmentalists and NGOs. Okay? It is true that it is the Dalits, particularly their women, who are the rag pickers and sanitary workers, primarily responsible for maintaining physical health of metropolis, some cities. Rag picking Dalit women play an important role in maintaining the health of the city, even though the themselves are dispossessed of their personal endowment. And personal endowment, good health, strong health, clean habitat and decent ecological surroundings. You can ask, now Dharavi is including Najib, so there are other parallel, very wretched kind of slums coming up even in Mumbai. While on their odd job, they face enormous difficulties. They are chased away like stray dogs by the police personnel and private security guards who provide security to middle-class urban localities in Mumbai, elsewhere, anywhere in Delhi. They suffer from chronic ailments that result from dangerous sites from where they collect and sort out their garbage. Okay. And recently we were told that a rag-picking woman was raped by 6-7 people in Nehru, Sanjay Gandhi Park in Mumbai. I don't know whether you have heard this news. It was not a national news. Has anybody heard this news? Yeah, it was there. And I saw it on the regional TV. We have several examples of Dalit sanitary workers, and they now are called Swachhakar community. They adopted a new term, Swachhakar community. This is the Darshan Ratan Ravan who is given this term. Some of whom die every year in a manhole while on the job. And we know this document, it is well documented now. Rag picking is no doubt an obnoxious option, and yet Dalits are forced to do it. Taking huge risks not for the self but for others' well-being certainly carries high degree of moral significance. Doing dangerous job also involves living dangerously on the margin of the wretched slum. The obnoxious overlap between the two kinds of dangers has an annihilating implication which removes the moral distinction between subject and object. This in effect makes Dalit as a part of dirt. Eventually Dalit becomes dirt and dirt becomes Dalit. Dirt is Dalit and Dalit is dirt. Dirt is Dalit and Dalit is dirt. Correct. There have been attempts by some rag pickers led by some NGOs from Pune to achieve this moral separation of Dalit from dirt. This separation, however, is not structural. This separation now an NGO, very important NGO in Pune, led by non-Dalit people, and non-Dalit is important, to give identity cards to rag pickers so that they are not harassed. ID cards, they are demanded. There was a moment really go get the identity card for this rag pickers. Just to, I'm adding social name to that. Demand of ID card. This separation, however, is not structural but symbolic. As a part of the moral circle of separation, Dalit women, rag pickers are demanding special identity cards so that they could shed off the humiliating description that they are dirt. They are also demanding ID card for the social and civil protection from the uncivilized society. They are already making a definite move away from moral significance and making the struggle for dignity politically significant. So there is a change now. I've already made a move from moral significance to political significance, and this significance is mediated through the struggle for identity card and restoration of dignity. Political dimension to their struggle is mediated through the language of rights which they seek to advocate against civil society on the one hand and the state on the other. How they are actually invoking state to mediate with the civil society so that civil society becomes much more civilized, than what it is today. They are in a way reasoning out with the state that the later, as a matter of duty, should distribute the rights that would enable farmer to move out of the sense of insecurity. That would really help the rat seekers to move in the society, not with a sense of shame, but with a sense of dignity. That is the demand for ID card. But we have no idea, as I mentioned in my subsequent description. But the question that needs to be asked is, will their contribution to healthy environment in cities enable them to appear in the public without a sense of shame? As I have mentioned to you, this rape case in Mumbai. There are cases, of course, but this is a case which has different significance. In the context of this question, is it fair to conclude that rat seekers' demand for ID is a demand for a negative right or a positive right? It is deeply negative right as far as I can see. It is not negative in a formal sense where one would expect non-interference of the civil society when rat seekers are on their job. In fact, these rights are negative on a very substantive ground. They are the continuation of the negative rights that were given to Dalits during successive political regimes in the past. And I would like to mention one regime. For example, in the past, for example, in the prescribed regulated for example, the negative rights prescribed and regulated by Manusmriti, Dalits had rights to scrap, bones, hide, cast of clothes of landed gents in aristocratic class, and rights to tutor, late workwood, and I don't need to really tell you anything more about it. In Barabanki, now since I have a habit of really sharing with you, and social research work, as a social scientist, go to one village and make very, very huge generalizations. I also make a huge generalization on Barabanki. There is a movement in Barabanki by drone, and the government of UP really prevented them from collecting the bones, playing the hide and collecting the bones for different manufacturing purposes. But the government said, look, you can't do it, and you need to really acquire a kind of license to do this. They said no, and they went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court gave the judgment in favor of them. Now, what is this right? Is it a positive right or a negative right? That's the question that we have to answer. So that is the negative right given by Manusmriti. And also, the Badshah of Bidar gave 52 rights to Dalits, the Mahar. In the Adil Shahi in Bidar. And then there is a legend on these 52 rights. People keep writing on this. Even the Dalits quote it positively just to defeat Manusmriti. So that's a contestation which is politically motivated. I don't want to go into that. Now these are the negative rights, which have politics but not sufficient to really convert these negative rights into positive rights. Now the second phase is, and do we have some time? 10 minutes. So I have covered 2 points and I don't want to look at this now. I have to complete this. Now, the Dalits of India, I would say now, certainly Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, most importantly UP, and Maharashtra of course is there, Karnataka is there, and I have not seen rights in Rajasthan, land rights, there must be. So there is an NGO working on the land rights, Dalit NGOs. There is a compelling of NGOs working for the Dalit land rights. Now, the struggle for land rights in Maharashtra has been a very significant struggle to the extent that it has given up negative rights and converted the rights into positive rights. And land is one side which can achieve this conversion from negative to positive. That's it. In 70s and early 80s, you find that there was a long struggle by Dalits to capture Gairan land, the village common. And you know, some people, the environmentalists, have a different connotation for this. They think that commons are democracy. I don't want to name them, a very big figures, because, you know, I'm really worried about my own well-being at the moment. Because you're not allowed to work in environmental issues. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to work on this.
Whenever you not mention the name here, you should not be scared.
I'm not sure, I'm playing safe. So, the struggle of the Dalits to convert the right, to capture the commons, to establish their rights on land, a piece of land. And there are struggles, quite some of them very successful, some of them not so successful. And they are actually pushing the state to really give the Dalits, and Milin is there, he will confirm to this. Now, peace has brought, government played a very cunning role to make environmental groups fight with the Dalits. And then there was a big tension between the two of them. Now, how to sort it out? The NGOs always condemned the Dalits lacking sound, universal environmental consciousness. And they were condemned and accused of not having consideration for the future generation, because they don't have any stake in conservation. As we all know, intergenerational justice is based on conservation. And Dalits are being accused. They said, look here, you can accuse us, but our justice is the justice of today. And I'm making this point that their justice is here and now, very, very concrete, not the abstract justice, intergenerational justice. It's a very abstract. So that has brought the tension between the environment and the rights. And this is one point. The other point is, why is that? Is it something pathologically wrong with Dalits not to develop any universal intergenerational consciousness? Are they really pathologically incapable of perceiving some good things for the future generation? Why can't they really imagine? And I tell you, I don't know, and I have a very moving story of the 72 drought in Maharashtra, very terrific drought, devastated the life of many Dalits and other vulnerable groups. And who has the obligation for future generations? First, to articulate the justice concern for intergeneration. Do Dalits have? Do Adivasis have? Do invisibilized people have? Who has this? I mean, actually, those people who have really concern for those who have resources lasting for generations together, they only will really plead for intergenerational justice. Global warming, my God, big problem, all that. You ask any person who is actually fighting existential battle here and now, what is his or her conception of intergenerational justice? You will not get any answer. And this is the limitations of all these new things happening in the realm of justice. And you might blame them because they have interest in future generations to only procreation. And procreation is not really morally elevated project. Because animals have to procreate. So you are in a way bracketing. You are not giving any moral advantage to these people. So this is the critique of intergenerational justice. It is too abstract. When it on its way to become concrete, exposes its own limitations. It has several limitations. And when you look from the margin, you can really detect the limitations very well. You need to have prajna. Prajna is this word, but prajna is a critical insight. You need to have insight. Who can have insight? Who is privileged to have this insight? Will the rich people, corporate sectors will have this insight? Or the people from the margin? And I have gone through some literature, I have not come across any There are scholars who are very sensitive to poverty and other things, which is fine. And the two extremes, eco-fascists, they are called eco-fascists, will always go for bio-egalitarianism. Everybody, every organic body, water, rock, trees, plants, everybody has equal right to remain, to survive. Even dogs, and in jail, there's a big circle going on. So what should these poor people do? I mean, that's the central point, and I'm ending my presentation on this skepticism. I think you have to reformulate your understanding of intergenerational justice or anything in the context of the view from the margin, and view from the margin, history from village are all rhetorical usages now. But I think really there is something waiting for serious attention. There's something at the margin waiting for your serious attention. And with this appeal, I will stop here. Thank you very much for your comment.